Are we?
Yes.
Where are we?
Here.
Why are we here? Not entirely clear. We are misfits thrust into existence by random chance, with no hints at all as to how we're supposed to make sense of it all. It's immensely bizarre. Here we are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Here We Are podcast. I'm so excited. I was doing a bit of research, found one of the coolest studies I have seen in a while, and frantically emailed my guest today. Alain Cohn is joining me. Alain, would you mind introducing yourself and telling the listeners what you do?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be on your podcast. So I'm Alain Cohn. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Information at the University of Michigan, and I consider myself a behavioral economist. So I'm an economist by training, but my research crosses traditional disciplinary boundaries, and so a lot of my work is influenced by psychology, political science, and related fields.
Amazing. Love behavioral economists. It was, I think, my fifth episode of the show back 6 years ago or whatever. I had Dan Ariely on. And it was very exciting for me as a new podcaster and everything.
He's a great speaker, great entertainer, and fantastic researcher. Yeah. So we're doing related work. Yeah. And I've met him before.
Very cool. So I know that the study we're going to just start with, and you can set this up in any way that you like. You can give the listeners your kind of full background and some of the work that you did leading up to this or whatever. We're going to be talking about your work just more broadly. I also, and I want to acknowledge that you're probably sick of talking about this damn study because it was so popular that you must have found yourself talking with a zillion different people about it. But I'll be a zillion and one. So this wallet study, you went around losing a bunch of wallets on purpose to see if people would turn them in or not.
Yeah, exactly. So everything started, actually, if I may go back a little bit.
Of course.
It started because people always ask me, okay, how did you come up with this? And when they talk to a scientist, they think that there's some elaborate thinking behind it. And actually, it was also a little bit just coincidence. And so we did some consulting work in Abu Dhabi for the Crown Prince Court. And so one of the games that we used for our consulting work was a simple coin flip game. So we asked people to flip a coin and then to report the outcomes of their coin flips. And so we told them if the coin lands heads, then you earn some money. And if it lands tails, then you don't earn anything. And because people were unobserved while performing this task, no one knows whether people cheated or not. But obviously they had a financial incentive to cheat. So everyone could say, well, I was just lucky and I flipped heads. And so it's impossible to basically say if someone cheated or not. You can find out if you look at the aggregate level, because you know that if everyone would be honest, then 50% of the people should report heads, 50% tails.
Yeah.
And that was a very simple game, but the useful measure of honest behavior. And we found that it is quite portable across cultures or countries. And so that basically initiated a whole program to study people's honesty. Now, you might wonder why an economist is interested in studying honesty. And so, I think it's just generally interesting, but more importantly, honesty affects us in basically all aspects of our lives. So if you think about your your partner, to be honest with your partner, or being honest with your customers, or being honest when paying your taxes. So our society depends a lot on people's honesty, and especially like that they're voluntarily honest in many situations, because it's impossible to always have a police officer behind your back monitoring what you're doing. And so at the time, there was very little research systematic research on honesty in an everyday situation. Mm-hmm. So most of the studies use this kind of paradigm that I described to measure people's honesty in a very contrived setting, and usually also with student populations.
And since we're still speaking about contrived settings, can you give us what was the results of the coin flip study?
Well, yeah. So this relates really to Dan Ariely's work that you mentioned, because he has used this task too, or variants of this task.
Yeah, typically his book, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty, kind of has a number of similar studies and stuff that he talks about in it.
Yeah, exactly. I actually highly recommend that book, and there's also, I think, a movie out there. So basically, people cheat, but just a little bit on average. Of course, you have some people who might cheat more, others who cheat less. But I think what's surprising, at least to many people who have been studying honesty, is that people tend to be more honest than we think. So there is a little bit of cheating, but not to the full extent. So not everyone reports the outcome that would maximize the monetary payoff.
So no one, like, you would maybe think that in a lab setting like this, I go in there, what's the harm in me just being like, yeah, I flipped 10 out of 10 heads, pay me, whatever. Why not do that from like kind of a just classic economic standpoint?
Exactly. Like Homo economicus, what he would do is just to always report the successful outcome, because there is no negative consequence for doing so, and you can earn more money. But there are many psychological factors that kind of hinder us to cheat to the full extent, and so that's very interesting behavioral aspect to study. So why do people behave more honestly than we tend to think? And so if you come as a student in a laboratory and you sit in front of a PC, and then you're being asked to, let's say, flip coin 10 times. So what are some of the factors that make you report honestly rather than just going back home with a lot more cash in your pocket? Mm. And so basically there wasn't a lot of evidence, what we call from the field, so from natural situations where people are typically not observed, so they don't know that they're part of a study. And so you can imagine that thinking about studying honesty, that people have a desire to look favorable towards maybe the researcher, or to meet expectations of society, or all sorts of reasons to behave differently than they normally would. Mm. And so our goal was to design an experiment that kind of captures people's honesty in a setting where they would encounter in their daily lives. Mm-hmm. Now, we were not the first who kind of used this paradigm. So, for example, Reader's Digest, this kind of famous magazine, already employed a similar paradigm, but we did some tweaks and so made some changes to improve the design, and just conducted a study at a much larger scale than anyone has before. So, for example, one big difference to the classic paradigm that dates back to Milgram in the 60s is that we didn't just drop wallets on the street and wait until passersby will pick them up. The problem with that is you don't have control over who participates in the experiment. So it might be particularly honest people who see a wallet and then they pick it up and return it, or it might be exactly the opposite. It might be those who seek to enrich themselves, who pick it up, and then you draw basically wrong conclusions about the general level of honesty in society.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so we basically started with a pilot study in Finland, because we had a student who wrote a bachelor thesis with my colleague Michel Marchal and me. And so he did an exchange semester in Finland, and we told him, why don't you turn in some wallets? So that's what we did, is basically instead of dropping them on the ground somewhere, we went inside establishments like banks or hotels or police stations. I just went by, said, I just found this outside around the corner. I have to catch the train. Can you please take care of it? And then basically left.
Yeah.
So we clearly assigned the task to someone working in a particular institution.
Very clever. And I imagine too, when you started out with in Finland, it was probably easier to start out and get funding for, just a small area first before you went about asking for, I'm going to need 17,000 wallets and a lot of small bills or something.
Yes,
right?
well, it was an expensive study in my field, so behavioral science. I would always argue that it compared to other fields like physics or maybe, I don't know, like astronomy or so, they have to buy very expensive equipment. Yeah. And so compared to those researchers, this is just a drop in the bucket. But
astronomy is more expensive than intentionally trying to lose money.
And in our case, we gave back to society. So actually people were allowed to keep the money in the wallet, because in the end, as economists, we calculated what's cheaper. Is it to go back and pick up the wallet, or just to tell people, you know what, I left town, it's not that important to me anymore, just keep the money and donate it to charity if you want to. And that's what we did in many countries. Wow. And so the money went back to society. But so going back to your question, funding was actually quite challenging.
Well, now I'm worried someone's gonna find a wallet on the street and be like, "Ooh, a new stimulus package that they're rolling out during COVID. I guess this is mine now."
Yeah, you're right.
So go on.
Yeah, so I know I was just talking about the funding of the study.
Yeah.
So we did the pilot, which is normal. You would first want to test the design of your study, and then we also did some refinements to the design and improved it. But we didn't really think that far ahead about the funding, because we also didn't really plan to conduct the study worldwide. At the beginning, it was like a few countries, and then it was, okay, let's do like 18 countries in Europe, and then just it blew up.
This amazing. You end up with this amazing graph of this easy to understand kind of cross-cultural analysis of seeing country by country who was the most honest in this situation.
Yeah, but that was not our original plan. So it just kind of evolved, and in the end, we saw that. We thought that it's important to get like a more global picture of honesty, and not just like we also wanted to provide a data set for other researchers that they can use, because so far researchers have relied mostly on survey-based measures of honesty and other aspects of morality. And as I mentioned before, they're always prone to what we call demand effects or social desirability effects. So you give an answer that you think the other person likes to hear. So the reason, so we didn't think about funding too much because we started small. But also, interestingly, it was actually quite hard to get enough funding for this study, because a lot of institutions thought we can't pull that off. So they thought like this is a huge project, and I mean it felt a little bit like having your own startup company, not really knowing what you're doing, and then you have to kind of assemble a team and write protocols and so on.
This
so
is amazing. Just to go around losing 17,000 wallets worldwide. Like, what's the distribution gonna look like on this? How do you? This massive coordinate. What was more expensive, the wallets and the money in them losing, or the team of people and the number of hours?
That's a good question. So I think it was mostly the money and the equipment. We actually we kind of assembled a team of 13 research assistants. And they were all students, not necessarily.
This is like the opposite of Ocean's 13 here.
Yeah,
it's like a Robin Hood version.
That's another, I've never heard that one before. That's a good one. Exactly. They were super motivated. I mean, it was a lot of fun for them. So they did it as part of their bachelor or master thesis. So we didn't have to pay them. But for them, it was a great opportunity just to travel across the globe and to experience research firsthand. And for them, it was particularly exciting because they went to places that normally they wouldn't. So we sent them to countries that are probably not on top of your list of destinations that you would visit. And also within certain countries that you might be familiar with, we sent them to cities or regions where normally as a tourist, you probably wouldn't go. And there was a really positive group dynamic developing, and they really had a lot of fun together, because in some countries, we also did some overlaps so that we can measure what's the impact of the researcher, like the experimenter, what's the impact truly of our stimuli.
Is there a beautiful woman turning it in, or is there an old man turning it in? Or?
Yeah, turns out that it doesn't matter that much. I guess this is partly also because the interaction was very short. So we basically sent them inside a building, and a minute later they came out. But we, like from a scientific perspective, you want to know whether your results are driven by the experimenter, by the research assistant, or by the factors that you're actually interested in.
And you're also in this kind of testing the honesty of unpaid researchers too, in a way.
Yeah, that's a question I've heard before. Like, how do you know that they didn't just pocket the money? Well, we employed Swiss students, and if you remember, Switzerland is at the top of the ranking, so they're very, very reliable. No, and we also did some checks, but obviously you can never be 100% sure. But I don't have any reservations. The students were just fantastic. They had a blast together, and they did excellent work. And it was tough, because imagine, like, as a student, your job was, first to plan the whole trip in advance, like just if you go to a country, you have like 500 locations that you need to visit within maybe a week, 10 days, or maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. You have to carefully plan every trip, every single day, where to go, which places to go, think about customs border regulations. Just a lot of things, and then it's basically walking around all day long, and taking bus, tram, taxi, going just from one place to the next, turning wallets. They were completely exhausted afterwards.
I never even considered all of these variables. How incredibly hard it is to go and lose 17,000 wallets.
Yeah, and sometimes they had big sums of money in their backpack. Yeah, so I remember, like, I took a picture when they came to the US. I was still in Chicago, and I think they went to the bank and grabbed like $35,000 or so, and we put it on the table. And because we needed small change, like single dollars, or like even we even included some coins just because of the sound that coins make in a wallet, so that people know, okay, there is some money inside. So everything was predetermined, exactly 3 coins in each wallet, regardless which country. And so we put it on the table, and it looked like in a mafia movie, where I was kind of like selling drugs or whatever. Like, I took a picture because I've never had so much cash in front of me. And,
and these wallets, are you running them through a rock tumbler ahead of time, or sticking them in a dryer filled with roughening them up a little bit, or are you just turning in these brand spanking new
yeah, that's a good question. So we decided against using this very like traditional wallets, like you can think like a leather briefcase or something like that, because we were worried that some people would be reluctant to look what's inside. So maybe for privacy reasons, whatever, you wouldn't like open it and search through someone else's content. So what we actually did is to use transparent business card cases, but basically use it as a wallet. And I mean, some people would argue, well, this is not supernatural. I would say, well, I have used these kind of wallets myself, because as a guy, you just want to put it in your pocket, and this is like the smallest thing that you can put in your pocket that fits also like business cards, credit cards, and cash. And the other reason for having this kind of transparent business card cases was because we had certain conditions where there wasn't any money inside, but all the other stuff like grocery list or key and some other stuff, so that people wouldn't expect that, oh, there's a wallet here, but there's no money. So I guess the person who handed in the wallet actually took out the money and just turned in the wallet without the money. And so we didn't want to create these expectations that, oh, I have a wallet, but there is missing money inside. So the person who actually turned it in probably took it for himself.
So what did we find out? Where's the most honest countries? You already said Sweden, right?
Yeah, so Switzerland.
Or Switzerland.
Yeah, so the focus of our study was actually not really to determine which country was most honest and which country was least honest, but rather how people respond to the financial incentive to steal. So our main manipulation in the experiment was simply how much money there is in the wallet. And so as economists, we thought, well, the more money in the wallet, the less likely people are to return it. When we ask experts, they said the same thing. When we ask lay people, they said the same thing. So everyone kind of expected that people would be less honest if there was a higher temptation to be dishonest. And what we found, it was the exact opposite. And it all started in Finland, where we did this pilot study, where we already observed this phenomenon, and we thought, well, that's kind of odd. So we then moved on, went to the UK and Poland and Germany, just to have like a few other countries that differed quite dramatically in their cultural context and also corruption and wealth of their citizens. And everywhere we went, basically, we found these results. So in the end, out of the 40 countries, we found this effect to be robust to emerge in 38 out of these 40 countries. And in these 2 other countries, I don't remember now exactly which ones these were, but there the decrease was basically zero, very small and not statistically significant. So we found some global phenomenon that was kind of tough to explain, but this is exactly what science is about. It's boring when you kind of just confirm your priors. It's much more fascinating when you're surprised by the result, and then you need to explain why this is the case.
So maybe if there's more, well, maybe first off, what kind of money are we talking about? Like in U.S. current, was every country kind of like based on scaled to their
exactly. Yeah, we adjusted the cash amounts using what we call a based on purchasing power parity. So for lay people, think about how much a Big Mac costs in the US compared to, let's say, Switzerland. And so basically we adjusted the monetary amounts according to that. And so we had three main conditions, one with no money, but all the other things like a key and grocery list and business cards and so on. Then we had a small cash condition with about $14. And then we have a high stakes condition with almost $100. So because we really wanted to know, so I mean, $100 is really tempting. No one observes you. Like you could easily hide what you're doing. No one expects you maybe to return it, and so we really wanted to tempt people to keep the cash and not return the wallet.
And just to clarify, what else was in? So there was 3 coins, and then was there keys?
Yeah. So the idea of the key, so it's kind of twofold. So one is we just wanted to make the wallets valuable also in the condition where there wasn't any money. So if you think about the wallet that doesn't have money, we couldn't, like, we didn't employ credit cards or other things like a driver's license. Because I mean, first of all, like how do you get driver's licenses for all these countries? And second of all, like you don't want to.
If anyone could have pulled it off, it would have been you.
So you don't want to get into legal troubles faking driver's licenses across the globe. So we needed something that is kind of like that signals, hey, there's some value for the owner.
Yeah.
And so we use
someone's not getting in their house today if they don't get this.
Yeah, and
wallet
you're worried that
right.
someone might, I don't know, maybe break in with
right.
using the key and so on. And the other thing that we did with the key, it's actually provided us with nice manipulation, because what we could do is just remove the key and see what happens. And that allowed us to actually to isolate the particular psychological motivation, namely altruism, because the key, it's basically for the person who finds the wallet or brings it back, or like turns it in, the key is basically useless. If you don't know what the key is good for or is used for, I mean, what do you want to do with it? But you know that it creates harm to the person who owns the wallet, because they're going to search for the key. They're going to be worried that someone's going to enter their home and so on. So this is a situation where you don't have a personal financial incentive or temptation to take it, but you know that if you don't do the right thing, then you're gonna harm someone else. And that allowed us to isolate the pure effect of altruism on the likelihood of returning a lost wallet. So the other things that we had in there were business cards. So this was the purpose of the business cards, was to signal that who the owner is. So we had like a description and an email address and so on. And then we had the grocery list. The grocery list was intended to signal that the person is likely some local guy who lost his wallet. So we didn't want to have people thinking, well, maybe it's a tourist, and it's going to be cumbersome to return the wallet.
So you're losing it in Wisconsin, so you're putting like cheese curds on the list and brats and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And we had to come up, and the tricky thing is,
this is so much more involved than I would have ever imagined. This is amazing.
The thing is, you have to think about every little detail, because what you want to do is you want to keep it comparable across countries. So you need to find products that are kind of common in most countries. Now, there's variation across countries. So we switched, for example, from pasta to rice, but we kept it as similar as possible. Yeah. Were
there ever arguments of like, oh, you can't compare that to a brat. A hot dog's not like a people getting very defensive about
no,
foods.
actually, our most critical reviewers they were okay with the grocery list. That they had other concerns, I guess. So, for example, one issue that people raised, and I think it's a fair point, is that we basically signaled that if you want to contact the owner, you should send an email. And obviously not people vary in the degree they use emails across countries, and that might affect the rates that we observe. If we compare the levels of the return rates across countries, then this might affect it. But I mean, we did some robustness check and didn't find that much evidence. And it's also partly the reason why we went to different type of establishments or institutions, because let's say in a hotel or so, email is much more common than maybe in a postal office or so. So there were certain aspects of the design that have been criticized, and sometimes for good reasons. And yeah, but it's always a trade-off. If you can never keep everything completely identical across countries, but you want to keep it as similar as possible in order to make it comparable.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. And so, well, the other thing too is so I've lost 2 wallets in my life.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, it was both times I was drunk. The first one I was like, God, I was like 20 or something like that, or 21, and I was just blackout drunk. And I didn't find out until I went to the wrong house at one point and tried to get in and I was just completely blitzed. And that wallet was apparently dropped in a yard because it was picked up by a postal worker like months later and returned to me. The second wallet I lost was in a bar in Milwaukee, like 6 years ago or something like that, and that was not returned to me.
Sorry to hear.
And well, so in that small sample size, I still think that there is that I would make a prediction that how likely a wallet is to get returned to you is how much alcohol consumption there is involved in the would-be returners, because someone at a bar with a little bit of a buzz is going to have a little looser moral standards, and even take morality out of it, maybe lacking the motivation to attend to good citizenship.
I think you're absolutely right. I was just trying to think of, as research, you always look for evidence. I'm not sure if someone has tested the causal impact of alcohol on people's honesty, but I think you're right. Like at least there is some research that shows that you need some self-control to be honest, and so the more you drink, the less self-control you have, and so you're basically succumbing to your material self-interest more easily, I would say. Yeah.
So absolutely. You're better off losing the wallet at, like, say, a movie theater than inside of a if you can choose where to lose it.
Yeah, that's right. But I think I mean, you were maybe a little bit unlucky, but I think wallets are returned at a much higher frequency than we tend to think.
Yeah. So the brilliant thing about the keys, because when you were saying the money difference, I imagine many listeners were probably coming to the same conclusion that, like, $13, like, yeah, it'd be nice to get this back to someone, but I'm busy today. I'm in the middle of a bunch of things. $100. Well, now this is really, that's, I wouldn't want to lose $100 myself and this and that. But the keys, that's that's in many cases more valuable to the average person than $100 is.
That's exactly the reason for having the key, to kind of make it always valuable to the owner. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So just to give you like some impression of the return rates, on average, it was about 40% across all countries in the no money condition. And when you included like $14, it was 51. And then if you included almost $100, it increased to 72%. So quite a bit of an increase. Now, the thing that we learned is that it cannot just be explained by altruism. Now, that's something that I think most people find it intuitive, say, well, we just care about other people. And the answer is yes, we do to some degree. We care about other people. But altruism by itself cannot really explain why we see this increase in return rates when we increase the amount of money. Because if you think about it, it's always a little bit a trade-off between, okay, we have, let's say, $100. Should I give it to you or should I keep it? So, and because people, they like to care about other people, but they still like themselves more, I would say. And it's also what the research shows. If you increase the amount of money, you're not just increasing the harm to the other person, but you also increase the financial temptation to keep it. And so in order to explain this increase with the amount of money in the wallet, you need a second psychological force. And that was basically the new thing that this study showed, was the psychological force interacts with the incentive to steal. So what this means is that it's not just that people care or not about doing the right thing, but that the material benefits of doing the wrong thing, that they interact with this psychological cost of being nasty to someone else. And so we call this in the paper theft aversion. Another way to think about this is just self-image. So you like to think of yourself as a good, honest person.
Yeah.
Now, the more money there is in the wallet, the harder it's going to be to convince yourself you're still being a good person. So you see, like the cash involved, the incentive affects this, increases this psychological restraint, so that you're more likely to do the right thing.
Yeah, this is kind of you're defending your own psyche a little bit in ways too. You don't want this weighing on you. Was there? I'm curious if you collected any secondary data on the age of the estimated age of the people that you turned the wallets in with, and found anything there. Because before you say, but what I would guess, and also not be surprised to be completely wrong, is that older people would be more likely to return it for a variety of reasons. One, they're more financially secure, and $100 isn't the same. But also, there's like and it's not that like I'm casting judgments on like the morality of a young person so much as like the toll of mistakes that burden you through a lifetime, build with age. And I remember being 14 years old and just being a little turd and like leaving a nickel for a tip or something like that, and thinking it was funny, or like I skipped out on a bill a couple times when I was like 14, 15 and just a little shit. And I'll never forgive myself for it. And I'm probably such a better tipper than had I never done that, I'd probably be like a 18-20% tipper today. But because I did that, I'm like 20 to 25%.
You have to compensate for your past self.
For the rest of my life, I'm compensating for that. And if you're older, like, yeah, I might get $100 now, but then I'm gonna feel guilty, and now I'm gonna have to be donating to every charity 8 times a year because I won't be able to stop thinking about that stupid $100 I stuck in my wallet.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we asked our research assistant to kind of guess people's ages, but obviously this is just a very crude proxy of people's actual age. And so we ended up kind of dividing the sample into two groups. I think it was like above and below 50 years of age. And if memory serves, now I'm not 100% sure I remember this correctly because our paper has so many different analysis in there, but I think the older ones were a little bit less likely to return the wallet, but just to a small degree. Now maybe I'm wrong. I would have to be sure. I would have to check.
Yeah.
But I think you addressed like an interesting point. That is, you were talking about when you were young, you weren't able to tape. Maybe then it's bigger temptation. Now in our study, obviously we didn't have very young people in there because we targeted employees at institutions like police stations or banks and so on. But financial background matters. I'm sure that matters a lot. And we also find that there's a strong positive correlation between wealthier countries and levels of honesty in those countries. So
what's the correlation?
It's about 0.7 or so. But even if we control for
wait, which way though? More
so
wealth,
the more wealth, more honesty. Yeah.
But we're talking about a country as a whole, not not.
But this isn't
because some of those things in the little bits of thing that I've start to evaporate and say like the 1% is often people that are well off are often bigger cheaters over trivial things in situations than lower income people. I've seen some research.
That's a good point. So we use GDP, so gross domestic product, which is kind of a proxy for the average income in a country. And obviously there's typically a lot of variation in how much money people have, but we find this relatively strong correlation between our measure and the average income in a country. Once we account for different levels of wealth in a country, we still see relatively big differences across countries. So while there is a strong correlation with a country's wealth, that doesn't really explain why we see these huge differences across countries. Now, it's also difficult to know whether wealth actually impacts honesty or whether it's the other way around. So it could be that if you're more wealthy, then you're not going to starve if you return the wallet. On the other hand, it's also in countries, honesty also promotes wealth, because if people are honest, then society just functions better. If you think, let's say, about eBay, you buy something on eBay. If you know that the seller is honest, you're more likely to buy, and so on. So, the markets,
in many conditions, being honest and being authentic have a social value attached to them, and consumer confidence and trust and so on.
Exactly. And so basically what I believe now, it's hard to prove, but what I believe that causality runs both ways. So honesty leads to more wealth, but also wealth leads to more honesty. Now, in our paper, we looked at historical variables because they're unlikely to be affected by current levels of honesty. So we use kind of historical proxies for wealth. And you might laugh now about what I'm going to say, but we use kind of like geographic factors like latitude or temperature and weather conditions and so on, because that actually matter quite a bit if you go back in time, matter quite a bit for how society or like smaller groups were organized and could engage in trade and so on. So we use these historical variables instead of contemporary levels of GDP and to measure its impact on our measure of honesty.
Oh, yeah. Could you go into that just a little bit? Because as you say that, something that springs to mind is like cultures of honor that evolve, these kind of sheep herders in various regions of Europe that had, because you're herding sheep, there's these conditions where you're a little more vulnerable to having cattle or whatever stolen from you. Because of this, those people tend to be more, if I'm remembering right, like reactive to being wrong or whatever. And interestingly enough, those people tended to migrate to the south of the United States, and are probably that might be like kind of a holdover of what's created Southern pride, is this holdover from migrating from these herding cultures. So is that the sort of thing that you're talking about?
Absolutely, exactly. I mean, this is still very speculative, because we obviously can't manipulate those things, and there's no causation without manipulation. So we always have to take these results with a grain of salt. But we looked at certain conditions, because if you think about honesty, there are kind of two aspects to it. So first of all, it's just how honest people, how much they care about honesty, but it's also how they apply honesty towards other people. So is it that they are honest towards their closer social circle, like family and friends, or are they honest towards strangers? And what we studied in our paper is this form of honesty towards stranger, which is so important for advanced societies. So you're not just interacting with your friends and family members, but you engage in economic exchange with strangers, people you have never seen before. Sometimes you will never see them again, and the question is, do you trust they're honest, and are they going to be honest towards you? And so we tied our results back to kind of indicators how society was organized, let's say 2,000 years ago, more. And so in these small groups, whether they were kind of forced because of, let's say, weather conditions or so, to interact with other villages more so than or just with the people in their own village. And so both kind of societies, small scale societies, might care similarly about honesty, but one group might be just honest towards their in-group members, and the other might be honest also towards out-group members. Right. And so what we find is that a lot of these variables that kind of are correlated with societies that had to be open to strangers, that had this experience of kind of dealing with people that they don't know, that they are today show higher levels of this of civic honesty.
Interesting. That that makes me think about a lot of consequences in a lot of domains in terms of small town people being tighter knit, but maybe not trusting kind of things on a national level, and thinking all the news is fake and that sort of thing.
Just to give you one example, we look at the pathogen prevalence. So kind of the sickness that was present, and so those smaller groups that were plagued by certain illnesses, they were much more worried about strangers coming into their society,
because their immune system's compromised. Yes, and
exactly.
And their which primes their psychological outgroup bias to be averse to potentially new pathogens coming in.
Yes, exactly. And so we find that still, like today, we see differences across countries that varied in the extent to which they were exposed to pathogens. Yeah.
Wow. Holy crap. You really, this is
a lot of food for thought.
It's so fantastic. Because it's not like I didn't dig into your research that much. I read the paper, or at least skimmed it. I forget. It's been a few weeks now. And I saw some article about it and everything too, and I thought of my own questions and thought of many different variables, and wow, it just keeps on expanding the more that you think about it, like a wallet that folds open and then folds into another compartment and then has a little hidden nook in there. That's what your study is like, a very
absolutely. I mean,
very complex wallet.
If you look at the study, the main text is just a few pages, but we have an appendix that is kind of like
I didn't read the appendix.
pages or so, and so there's a lot of things in there.
That might be a hobby of mine one of these days, is just to read the appendix on that thing.
So I always told my wife I never wanted to write the book, but actually.
Too late.
I probably already have. Just I don't call it a book, but
just no one will ever read it because you couched it in the appendix of a paper.
That's true. But those who are interested, they can still they can look it up. Yeah.
Well, you should just take the appendix, rewrite it in slightly accessible terms, and boom, you got this. You got this book ready to go. This is a bestseller. This is a whole.
You can write it for me.
First of all, when we first emailed, I was like, well, I want to talk about your study, but we can just talk about it for 10 minutes or whatever and move on to your other stuff. And now it's been close to an hour, and I'm still just like, wow, I can't get over all of this. So I still have a few more questions for you. Mm-hmm. So, because I want to get into your other stuff as well. So first of all, what were some of the cross-cultural differences that you ended? So wait, now I'm trying to figure out. So you took all of this. So if you dig into the appendix, you went and found like longitude and latitude, climate. You went back through time. You guys really thought of everything. But then you eventually like put together a nice, easy to understand, like fun little graph. People love a good graph. I saw this thing. I was like, this is such a beautiful, perfect, hey, we can look country by country and see who's the most honest by this measure. What did you find? What countries won?
Yeah, so what you would expect is like the Scandinavian countries are on top, and Switzerland. But there were also some surprises, like at least to me, maybe I'm just ignorant, but like countries like Poland was very honest. Then on the other hand, we found that UK and the US were below average. I mean, they were somewhere in the middle, but below average. And at the bottom, you had Kazakhstan, I think Chile and China.
Okay.
But like I said, like our focus was not really on these country differences. This was just supplement. We have to be careful in interpreting these differences across countries.
Yeah, and that's the easy thing to latch onto. I imagine I'm not the first one that wanted to know all about that, right? Like I imagine most people want to know, where does my country fall on this list? How do we where did you say America was again, or the United States rather?
Well, the United States was somewhere in the middle, but below average. Okay. I would have expected it to be a little bit higher, though. Yeah.
Well,
Very
thank you
close
for
to
that.
the UK. Well, I have had many positive experiences since I moved to the US, so maybe I was too optimistic.
Yeah. I mean, the US is so enormous and it has so many different cultural things. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
China's incredibly huge as well.
And there's a lot
Huh.
of inequality also in the US, both in
Right.
terms of ethnicity, but also in terms of income. And that has been shown to be a bad thing for civic capital.
Yeah. So poverty is something that's going to decrease honesty when it comes to something like
Yeah,
financial gain.
maybe more so the clash between the divide between rich and poor. Not even the like the presence of poverty, but
I see.
it's the inequality. And I think
Right.
the US is a country that there's just and that this is something that was very different from what I was used to in Switzerland. I think in Switzerland we also have quite a bit of cultural diversity, but we wouldn't see someone on the street begging for money, homeless people, and just people who struggle financially, making meat ends, that live just next door, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that, was kind of revealing to me, and also made me think. I did a lot of research in recent years on economic inequality, because I think it's really important to understand what's going on, and also to think about ways how we can make it better.
Yeah, so let's get into that. And that's if there was any open loops that you needed to wrap up with the wallet study that I'm not thinking of, let me know. But otherwise, I would love to talk about some of your inequality research if we could.
Yeah, of course. Yes, I just finished the paper basically looking at people's attitudes towards government redistribution. So, like I mentioned, I think inequality is one of the defining challenges of our times. It's also what President Obama said in 2013. So we were interested because one of the easiest way to reduce inequality is having the government redistribute from the rich to the poor. And so we were interested in how people think about government redistribution, in particular, how wealthy people think about government redistribution. The reason for focusing on the wealthy is because they typically have more power and influence both in business and politics. And because they have disproportionate influence in society, we were just wondering how they differ, whether they differ from the rest of the population, and if so, why. And so what we did is we recruited an unusually large sample of the top 5% in the income wealth distribution in the US, and compared their behavior and responses to a representative sample of the bottom 95%. So those who were to be top 5, you needed to have a yearly income of 250,000 or more, or liquid assets, I think it was $1 million or more. So, I might be wrong about that number, but somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing what we did is just simply ask them, what do you think? Should we lower or increase taxes for the very rich? Also, we asked them about their political preferences. So we asked them, did you vote for Donald Trump in the 2016 election? And what we find is that relatively large differences between the top 5% and the rest of the population. So the top 5, they're less in favor of redistribution, and they were also more likely to vote for Trump in the 2016 election. And the difference is relatively big. It's 12 percentage points. It's about the same as the gender gap in voting preferences. And so now the question is, why do we see that difference? And one immediate answer is, well, it's just because the rich have to pay for government redistribution. They pay the higher taxes. They are basically subsidizing those who are well off, and so obviously they're going to be against it. Now, when we looked at a little bit more closer at the rich people and divided them between those who were directly affected by a change in taxes that we were focusing on and the others, we find very similar attitudes between the two groups. So it didn't look that it matters whether you have to pay for it or not. And so we looked a little bit deeper into people's preferences and beliefs, trying to understand why those two social classes differ so much in whether they think the government should redistribute or not. And one key primitive that we focused on is inequality acceptance. And we measured inequality acceptance with a simple behavioral task. So we basically hired a bunch of workers on Amazon Mechanical Turk, let them work for us, and then we gave, everyone received a certain amount just for participation, and they did a real job. And then we gave one worker, we gave a high amount, and the other worker we didn't give anything. And then we asked our survey respondents to redistribute money from the low to from the high to the low income worker. So they could not distribute at all, or they could say, well, I want to equalize how much both people earned. We also varied whether it was pure luck that decided who would earn the high bonus versus no bonus, or whether it's based on performance. So whether it's the high performer who would receive the bonus and the other person not. And then we just asked them to redistribute between these two workers and paid out these workers according to their decisions. Now, here's the situation where your own material self-interest doesn't play any role because you make a decision about two other people you don't know. So it really measures your fairness views. Do you think everyone deserves the same thing, even though maybe one worker worked harder on this than the other one? Or do you think it's more fair that everyone receives his fair share depending on how much effort you put in and so on? Mm-hmm. And what we found is that the wealthier people are much more inequality accepting. They tolerate inequality to a greater extent than the rest of the population.
Wait, welfare people?
Wealthy people. So the rich, the affluent.
People.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. All right.
So they're just more tolerant of inequality than the rest of the population. And we found that it didn't really matter what the source of inequality is. So whether it was pure luck who earned the bonus or whether it was based on performance, it didn't really matter. They were always just more okay with keeping the unequal distribution as is than others. And we found that this inequality acceptance, that is a strong predictor of attitudes towards government redistribution, and that once you account for differences in these fairness views, that the gap between the rich and the poor, or like the rich and the rest of the population, reduces quite a bit, like by almost 50%. And so that is a significant factor that explains why financially better off people are more okay with having more inequality in society than others.
That's amazing. Now, so this is getting probably more out of the realm of the testable and more speculative, but I think life, this organized chaos that we find ourselves in with this never-ending, this infinite number of variables that we have to sort out in life, and this complex morality that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years and interacts in this modern world and these different circumstances. Life is very messy. And one thing that money does is it puts this like really simple to understand, like you can teach a chimp some basic currency of like teach it that 10 tokens is better than 1 token or whatever and is worth this bag of Cheetos for this. It just kind of simplifies life. And then once you've kind of simplified it, do you think that money just automatically gets confounded for meritocracy, and people just kind of, even when you tell them, hey, this was a coin flip, this was random, you just kind of start equating, higher income with that person must have earned it, even when you tell participants otherwise?
Yeah, and I think this is right. That what surprised us actually is to find that those who were born into wealth, so those who grew up in a very wealthy household, they were actually much more similar to the rest of the population than those who earned their wealth by being an entrepreneur or by making smart financial investments. And I think what this suggests is kind of like you, as you move up the social ladder because you're being successful, you kind of think that probably you deserve it, and that it's all because of your hard work and because you were smart and whatever, but not so much how much luck is also involved in life. And maybe it's also just because you're the more you move up the social ladder, maybe you're also more exposed to ruthless people or to harsher conditions, a lot of competition at the top, and that just makes you more willing to tolerate inequalities than others. We don't know. This is again like kind of speculative, but it was for us. It was kind of surprising.
If you're a wolf on Wall Street, all you see is claws and fangs and the world's tough, kid. Get over it. Grow up.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not something that necessarily people are born with or that they get ingrained at a very, very young age. So we thought like one hypothesis could be, well, rich kids from rich people, they just go to school go to private school. They just interact with rich people. They don't know that people are suffering out there. But our research actually doesn't really show that that's the case. It's more that the experience of being financially successful that explains this difference in inequality acceptance. Yeah.
Wow.
Which makes it hard to kind of get rid of, if you think about it. If you make it easier for people from who start with little income to become millionaires, so the American dream, then that doesn't necessarily mean that once they're at the top that they kind of create a society that becomes more equal, because they kind of get used to these inequalities that they're exposed to.
You've honed this ruthlessness muscle potentially too, and are going to use it. Yeah. I mean, certainly it doesn't seem to be the case that you look at Warren Buffett or something like that. These people don't seem to kick up their feet, and retire and sit in a hammock. Like Warren Buffett's still, reading every possible thing that he can and bringing the exact change through the drive-through at McDonald's to buy the cheap meal, depending on what his personal worth is on that day determines how good of a meal it gets. And like all these, so that's maybe just this kind of fine tuning that you're doing to exist in that kind of environment. And then once you've built those habits, they're hard to.
But we don't find, and consistent with also other research, we actually don't find that the rich are more selfish, and that's also something I think most listeners would think. I mean, that's natural to think. well, you kind of have to be, like you said, like ruthless and just think about yourself to be successful. Maybe that's not entirely true. And we found in our study, at least, we find that the rich tend to be more pro-social. They donate a bigger fraction of their income and wealth to nonprofits and other good causes. And this is consistent with other research, for example, showing that during Second World War, so they were more likely to help people at risk of being persecuted, and so we have this notion that the rich must be selfish, and that might not be necessarily true. And selfishness is not the same as inequality acceptance. This is really about thinking about fairness, how you imagine society, how equal should society be, and these are kind of two different concepts.
Yeah, well, because I was going to say at first, being intuitively probably a little judgmental, I was probably, because I was going to say, I mean, once you get away from needs and some of the more basic needs or whatever that means, and your life becomes about advertising, it seems like in some of the wealthier people that I know or whatever, like life becomes about like hosting events and stuff like that. And like I know people are like, oh my God, I have to host this other thing. And it's just, and it's, you get to put your name on the gymnasium at the school your kid went to or whatever, and it's like these new forms of advertising that there's pressure to do. But the World War II thing, certainly if you're risking your life to hide Jews from the Nazis, that's not about just flaunting your wealth.
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't remember now every detail of this study. I'm sure they looked at if you're more wealthy, you probably have a bigger house or a bigger basement where you can hide people. I'm sure they looked at that too. So you have more opportunities or to also help. But for example, in our study, we just looked at the share of income. So not just like the dollar amount, which obviously like rich will donate more to charity, but just really the fraction of their income or wealth. And so yeah, we see more pro-social behavior on their part. Yeah. Interesting.
So if we can end with some modern day speculation or I'm just kind of curious what I always love knowing what every scientist has kind of created their own little lens through which they see the world for themselves, and their particular expertise makes them notice things or think about things in a different way. And it's been quite a year, and there's lots of talk about what should be done economically, and what are we just gonna, like, it's absolutely insane for anyone to be going out to bars. I can't believe people think that's an okay idea, but it's equally insane to just be like, yeah, we're just gonna let every bar close. So do we subsidize? Do we give loans? What do we do? It seems like this complex. And then do you help out some business that started in February as much as you help out some business that's been around for 20 years and has been successful up until this time? And what is there going to be a task force involved to tease apart all of this and to make sure? And you had the initial stimulus thing and these PPE loans, and I know already they're trying to get their money back from people that took advantage of this. There's people that have been charged for, lying about how many employees they had or whatever else. I'm just curious. You don't have to talk about any of the things I just mentioned, but maybe just things that you've found yourself thinking about or noticing in this that might be different than the average person.
Well, certainly. I mean, as an economist, I'm almost obliged to give answers to those questions, although I don't feel really qualified to
That's okay.
answer those questions. But I have some opinions. And like you said, I think, maybe more generally, like one thing that really surprised me is to see how few people really think about the externalities of our behaviors or our actions onto others. So if you think about the whole discussion about masks and other and other public health measures, people always think, well, about themselves. So okay, I want to have freedom. I don't like to wear a mask. It's kind of intrusive and so on. And I think very differently about this. I think it's not about me, but it's about not spreading it towards other groups, members of society who might be more vulnerable than me. And that we as a society, we need to kind of find ways to live together and be able to cooperate together and help each other. Because it's an interdependent society. So my actions have consequences for other people in many situations. And I'm just kind of a little bit surprised how difficult or how unaware people are of this, or how unwilling they are to kind of incorporate that thought into their thinking process. So that's one thing that kind of was a bit, and even in countries like Switzerland, where I would have expected that Switzerland is known like for high levels of social capital, where people kind of like there's a lot of trust in each other. There's a lot of caring of each other. It's a small country. It's much easier to also care about others, but still, like, people tend to forget that it affects others as well, and that's the main reason why we should follow certain guidelines. I think that's one thing I wanted to mention. I don't know what your opinion is about that, but
well, I have too many. I have too many, and I'm sure they're all wrong. I mean, I think that one of the biggest, craziest things from someone who's a live touring comedian who's out of work, who also produces shows, is responsible for getting people into a room. It's been surprising to me how difficult it is to explain to people that this is a false dichotomy that we're creating such a vast contrast of COVID versus the economy, as if they aren't intertwined, as if it's the regulations keeping every single person from crowding indoors to a comedy show. There's plenty of places I could go and legally perform and have people pack in. And even if I didn't value human life enough to do that, I would still have a difficult time marketing to people to get people to come in. What aren't people getting about that? And the idea that it's then, so once you've created that false dichotomy, then it's everything that's associated with COVID and public health is now in your mind the enemy of the economy, and something like masks that should have, at the very least, even if you think COVID's a hoax, and masks aren't, there is no economic argument against masks.
I mean, I just watched recently on Netflix, there was a World War II documentary, now in color. And what these people have endured.
I just started watching that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, really. And I just think like wearing a mask is just nothing compared to what those people went through. Yeah. And we just kind of forgot. So yeah, I agree. And I also think it shouldn't be a matter of politics, whether those things. It's about what experts, scientists say, and it shouldn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. For me, that has nothing to do with it.
And economists are scientists too. Like that's listening to scientists is also caring about the economy.
Yeah.
That's what people don't seem to. I think that's the really frustrating thing for me. Is like I can make an economic argument for increasing testing and increasing mask use to get COVID numbers down so that we can all start opening up more and living freer lives and everything else. Like, and I'm not an economist, but I think I wouldn't have to look too hard to find plenty of economists that would agree with that.
Yeah, no, I think it would have been good to put our economy into a coma for maybe a couple months or so.
Yeah.
And then, but like really shut it down. And then at the same time, give subsidies to companies so that they don't have to lay off people. I think the worst thing was that people were losing their jobs. And also I think that many companies took advantage of the situation to lay off people and to change certain structures and then to blame COVID for it. No, I think it's important that to help those companies stay in business, to keep their employees, keep the workforce, because I also think like the stimulus package. To everyone, I wasn't like a huge fan of it. I think either people are not going to spend the money, or like they're going to spend the money in wrong ways, also lots of people.
Harvard analysis of the PPE loans saved, for every job saved, it was calculated to be around $400,000 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Like I want to look at that again. Listeners probably shouldn't be quoting that like scripture, but I saw some seemed pretty reputable publication kind of looking at how effective those were, and it seemed like it was just the real problem was it was an opportunity to, a lot of people just fleeced the package.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you have a system in place, you will have people who are gaming the system, and who are going to abuse it. But I think like. Also, what my research, to circle back, shows is that more people are more honest than we tend to think, and I think shutting down a program because you have maybe a few people who abuse the system is maybe not a good argument to do so. I think most people just really need that support, and I think the easiest way is really to give it to businesses that they can keep their employees, and to those who don't have a job right now, who struggle financially, that they should get financial support. I don't think it is necessarily good to give this roughly the same amount to everyone.
Same time.
Because some people really do struggle, while others, I think, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like you. I mean, this is creating bigger government and more regulation, but what are you going to do if you want to like regulate and you're worried about people taking advantage? It does seem like it does seem like the broad strokes in this situation don't matter. It seems like it's more cost savings and more efficient to have some sort of organized system or some task force assigned to actually teasing apart which people are actually need money to pay rent this month, so they don't so they eat and aren't homeless and aren't forced to go and work their wait staff job under it's one thing for, say, a comedy club that's trying to open and distance and do everything right, and you're working at, say, 30% capacity. Well, I don't know the ins and outs. I haven't talked to club owners. I've turned down any work that's been, I'm just not interested at the moment, because I just don't think it'll. In my mind, I think that I think of the Dan Ariely's book of the honest truth about dishonesty, of everyone just cheating a little bit, telling themselves little bits of stories, and so these things like collapse over time. You say like, we're going to do 30% capacity, and that's not really paying the bill. So you're like, we'll squeeze in a few chairs, and now we're squeezing in a few chairs. And now it's like, what are we doing here? We're just telling ourselves a story. You're putting a thermometer up to people's heads to check their temperature, like anyone's coming in with a fever, and like that's not catching the asymptomatic spread, which is the whole problem. Like, none of that stuff makes that much sense, but it allows people to tell themselves a story. And once you're able to tell yourself these stories and justify these behaviors, and there's these economic incentives that don't need to be there, that's forced by not getting stimulus, it falls apart. And what are people going to do if they don't want their business to close? They want to be able to pay rent. They're going to go and they're going to work and and be around people in ways they probably shouldn't. And I don't know.
I completely agree, and also think that as humans, we're really good at deceiving ourselves to figure out how a story that makes us feel good about stuff. But also, I feel bad for people like you who kind of their work relies on having an audience or customers that they interact directly with. And I think these are exactly the people who need financial support. But also, I mean, if you look at yourself, you developed a podcast and did some other stuff. So in times of crisis, you get also creative.
Absolutely.
And I think this is like when I see friends of mine going on vacation and doing this and that, and I just think, well, let's just sit out for a year or two and do something else. Be creative.
What a terrible time to be on vacation anyway.
Yeah,
this is how you're going to spend your money. Everything's closed, and the people that are up, unless your kind of crowd is like Myrtle Beach spring break, like, because that's what's out there. The people that are the most cavalier about this, that's it's an indicator of intelligence, I would say, or at least there's people that don't care that much about society are sure having a wild time out there right now and getting to do whatever they want. But I think that there's such a difference between say even in my occupation, I can understand someone like myself who is a road comic who doesn't have their parents to come and stay with, to hunker down for a little while, and times are tough, and has the like, well, what else am I gonna do? And I've looked into potentially getting a regular job and everything else. There's a big difference between that and like those heartbreaking choices that are having to be made. And then there's a bunch of like, say, comedians that are very well off and make more money on their podcast or like TV show or whatever else that they do than they're making in the club anyway, and are still going out and encouraging people to go out and attend their shows just so they can get on stage and feel special during a pandemic. And then those people, I'm like, screw you. You have lost my respect for life. So, and then at that point, that's when I'm like, well, then I do kind of M4 mandates in certain if people are displaying that they aren't willing to step up and play ball, and everyone drives on this side of the street when we're going this way, and this other side of the street when you're going that other way, if people aren't naturally sorting that out on their own, these are extreme circumstances, and we're going to need to put potentially temporary social structures in place so that we can all because we can all go about our lives a little bit more. If I go out and I know that when I go someplace, someone's going to be wearing a mask and keeping at least 6 feet away from me. Now I can feel a little more comfortable going out and about or going into a retail store. But because I don't know that and I can't trust people right now, it's the risk is too high, and I'm having to think through too many variables for me to go out and do that and support the economy.
And there's actually there's research linking this kind of measure that we talked about most of the time in the episode here. So civic capital, civic honesty, and the willingness to wear masks and to social distance. And you clearly see regions where but there's higher social capital, that people are also more likely to do those things. So there's clearly a connection. Yeah.
Oh man, well, this was such a terrific conversation. Anything else that you wanted to mention before? I don't know if you have like a website that you wanted to plug for people, or anything else that you want them to check out.
I'm on Twitter. I have a website. You can access my research for free.
Man, I should start a book club to get into that 100-page appendix that you have. That thing sounds like a journey.
Other than that, I just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and just think that this is a great show, and it was a pleasure to be part of this, and I wish you a lot of success in the future with this, and
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
If you ever write that pop science book that I want you to, now you'll have to come back on and plug it. And is the website ALAINCOHN.com, or?
No, it's I'm too cheap. Like, it's kind of like a Google website. You just Google my name.
I'll put all the links and everything in the website and everything else. Well, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much, and stay safe. Yeah.
Will do. And thank you, listeners,
holidays.
for being such wonderful, curious people. We'll see you next week. Happy holidays to you. Happy holidays to listeners, and stay safe out there.